Now, another thing that brought about responsive design is the explosion of variation when it comes to different screen sizes. So at the time when responsive design was posed as a potential idea, smartphones were starting to be used quite a bit to access the internet, not nearly as much as they are now. But it was clear that the trend was towards different screens for different situations, and that even though people were spending a lot of time on desktops accessing the web, that would be rapidly changing since smartphones are with you all the time. And of course, if it's possible to access the information that you want immediately on your smartphone, then that's probably the way that you're going to do it. So responsive design helps to solve the problem of how a website is supposed to look on very small screens and on very large screens, while still maintaining some design integrity. Now, early on, in the days of the mobile web, there was another solution, which was to create totally separate sites for mobile access and desktop access. The idea was that with the mobile version, you'd focus on a very small screen, and you wouldn't worry about loading the kinds of assets like large images or content that you wouldn't be able to display on the small screen. And then for the desktop version, you could load in some of the bigger assets and more content. And this also helped address the issue of the difference of internet strength for mobile devices and desktop. Even now, you're generally going to have better internet when you're accessing the web via your computer than you are when you're using your smartphone or your tablet. So again, loading smaller assets, smaller images, fewer files, that's going to work better for those mobile browsers that have a smaller bandwidth. The problem, though, with having two separate sites to manage is that it increases the amount of work that you have. Even though you can automate a lot of the deployment of content to those separate sites, so you can, for example, just add an article in one place and deploy it to your desktop and to your mobile version. When it comes to adding features, changing navigation, or changing the look of your site, you now probably have about twice the work to accomplish those things, because you have two different sites to edit. Also, in terms of cost, it tends to cost more to build and then maintain those two separate sites. So responsive design addresses this problem as well. It allows a layout to collapse down to a smaller version and still have visual consistency with what it would look like on a larger screen. And if you do it right, you can prevent loading some of those big assets if the browser is smaller. So you can optimize the design for both those devices that have cellular internet and also those devices that are plugged into the internet. One other problem that having a mobile site and a desktop site doesn't address is what happens when your site is being accessed on screens that are in the middle. So on the whole, those are going to be tablets or really big smartphones. Does the viewer look at a smaller version of the desktop, or do they look at kind of this weird expanded version of the mobile site? There are, of course, ways to solve that problem, but the solution tends to be more elegant and sustainable if you approach it with a responsive design methodology instead of the separate site idea.